Where do you think your life would have been had you not quit drinking?
I mean, I obviously would not have a book on sobriety coming out, right? I would not be on a book tour right now. I would not be on a podcast. I probably wouldn't have a podcast. But I think on the outside, it would look pretty similar to what it does today. I think my story is more about what happened on the inside. And for me, if I didn't quit drinking 5.5 years ago, on the inside, I would still be battling so much shame and panic and anxiety and doubts and unable to trust myself. And I don't think I would have still hit the, quote unquote rock bottom. Um, but I think I would just be in the hell of moderation
And what was it about alcohol that made you feel that way?
that made me feel all of the panic and the shame. I mean, it's kind of what it does, right? So just like on a scientific basis, which is hilarious because I don't talk science, but in the book I had to research it. And so it does. It spikes cortisol and causes anxiety, messes with our dopamine and all of that stuff. But for me, the shame that alcohol brought into my life was probably just the most corrosive. And that shame stemmed from my past drinking and my relationship with alcohol. I grew up in the I'm 45, so in the 80s and 90s when it was more just like, don't do drugs, but alcohol, totally fine. And and I kind of took that to heart. I started drinking in high school. Not a lot. I was still a really good kid and a varsity athlete but then I really went for it in college and I was a binge drinker. And so those binge drinking days, really the shame that brought me. I was also a blackout drinker. Um and so whether that was, waking up and having no clue how I got home or waking up and having no idea where I was and who was lying next to me, that shame, I write about that a lot in the book and, you know, the walk of shame, like even that's what it's called for us girls who did that. Um, that shame of my relationship with alcohol carried with me all through my 30s and up until I was 39 when I quit drinking, even though my drinking was different. The shame was the same.
I think it's pretty common for people when they're younger to party, like you said. What did drinking in the day-to-day life with alcohol look like in your 30s compared to when you were in your college days?
In college, it was the binge drinking. In my 20s, it was still the binge drinking and the partying. I loved going to a nightclub, right? In my 30s, I met my husband when I was 30 and we got married. I was 33. Our dating was a lot of drinking. It was now instead of, Goldschlager shots and red Solo cups, it was Napa and champagne and prosecco. It was me being like, let's open another, right? And so it wasn't necessarily the party girl life, but it was still once once I have a glass or two of champagne, I want to keep going. And my story is a little bit different because it's where that kind of drinking bumped up against motherhood. And I write in the book about a specific instance that happened early on. My oldest daughter, she was my first baby. I only had one, and she was like 9 or 10 months old. And I had a night where I blacked out, and she was fine. She was safe. But it was that night and that early on, so I was 34, that I was like, okay, this will never happen again. We are not going to drink like how we drank in college and in our 20s. And no, this is going to be different. I'm a mom, right? The problem is alcohol doesn't know that, right? Alcohol doesn't care like that you're a mom and that you're 30s and that you've decided to drink differently. And so I did still keep alcohol in my life, but I was very clear about like creating these guardrails, this moderation. It took a lot of mental energy and willpower. I nailed it. I hated it. It didn't feel like I was nailing drinking, right? Because it felt like exhausting. And I didn't my kids never saw me drink, and it wasn't until my youngest son, so my 3rd baby, was 3 months old, and that this was the last time I drank. I I blacked out, and I nursed him in the night in a blackout. And I mean, I don't remember it, obviously. My husband and I went to a party, and we came home, so my kids still had never seen me drunk, but I woke up and had no idea, didn't remember coming home, and there was just no way he slept through the night. I mean, he was 3 months old and, maybe I nursed him twice. We'll never know. And so that kind of really propelled me into this thing of like, well, I'm done. Like I don't want to wait until I lose more than I just did. More than the memories of me nursing my baby in the night. Like that's enough for me. Even though by society's standards, like I didn't, I didn't qualify for this kind of sobriety AA alcoholic. I wasn't drinking daily. Maybe I wasn't even drinking weekly. I wasn't binge drinking much anymore, kind of ever. Um, but I hated it. I just always hated it. And I decided, yeah, it was January 19th, 2020, that I would figure out, you know, what this substance was that had been in my life for so long, and then what freedom from it really actually felt like.
So was your husband like just as bad as you were?
Um, was he as bad as I was? Oh, sorry. No. So he was definitely a party guy. He's 14 years older than I am, and he was like the work hard, play hard kind of guy. But I don't think I've ever seen my husband drunk. And so I was kind of the one, especially when we were dating, being like, "Yeah, let's open another bottle," like, "Let's do it." He continued drinking, actually. My husband didn't quit. I knew when I quit, I knew no one else who was sober in my life, like, not a soul. And I didn't ask my husband, like, how he felt. I didn't say, like, "Do you think I need to quit drinking?" I just told him that day I was done and, like, didn't ask for any he didn't ask any follow-up questions. He was just kind of like, "Okay." Um, and now it's crazy because now he's a year and a half sober. My mom's sober, my brother's sober. Like, there's this thing that happens, I think, when someone in our lives gets sober, and not in this it's not sober in the, "I wish I could drink." That's not my experience of sobriety. It's sober in the, "Thank God I don't have to do that anymore." So, yeah, now he's sober, but yeah.
Well, congrats to you both. I think that before we recorded, you were kind of saying that towards the end you didn't think you were like a full blown addict, and some people will say that the definition of addiction is continued use despite as adverse consequences. And I would imagine there were some adverse consequences along the way for you, and you continue to use. So that could be another discussion for another day. However, I do think,
Yeah, can I hop in?
yeah,
Okay, I think so this is interesting, and I'm really glad you brought this up, because when I say I wasn't, like, fully addicted, if alcohol is in your life for a consistent period of time, there is a level of addiction, right? That is shown in tolerance. Like if before you were fine with 1 glass of wine, then you're gonna have 2. Like, there's a level of addiction happening if an addictive substance is in our life. I guess what I mean by, like, I wasn't actively addicted is it was definitely the least amount I had drank in, the last night that I drank, I hadn't drank in 3 months before that, right? And so it was the least amount I had ever drank in my adult life. Um, but yes, like, alcohol is highly addictive. So I think it's a tough kind of conversation to say, are you addicted to an addictive substance if it's in your life, right?
Well, I think this is the tough part too, because I think people equate like being addicted to somebody having this massive rock bottom moment, right? And there's varying degrees of that. And I think that's probably why, in some ways, some people are afraid to quit because of, oh, my life isn't that out of control. I'm still able to have a job. I'm still a decent parent. I still have good relationships. Like, why do you think it's become so challenging for people, and you talk to people like this every day, to quit, even though like deep down they know they should?
I do think that the noise outside drowns out what we know inside in many instances, right? And I know for me, and this is just for me and my drinking, I never, I still don't call myself an alcoholic. I didn't go to AA. I don't say I'm in recovery. That idea of this person who qualifies for quitting drinking, that idea kept me drinking because I thought if I'm not that, right? If I'm not Meg Ryan in When a Man Loves a Woman, if I'm not Nicolas Cage in Leaving Las Vegas, if I'm not that, then there's nothing to see. Then I just keep going. Then I just have to figure out how to drink better, right? Like I forgot to drink water. I didn't eat enough bread, all of these things. That is it's like the litmus test, right? And really what I'm trying to do is to say, just forget all of that. Like that noise outside that's telling us, yes, you qualify for sobriety. No, you don't. What I said when I quit that day is like, I literally looked around and I was like, well, what does qualify me for quitting? What would qualify me to the outside to quit drinking would be if they could see how drinking has affected my life. And in order for them to see that, that means I'm losing something that is precious, right? That means I'm getting a DUI, I'm losing my license, I'm losing custody, like my marriage. And I just had to ask myself, am I willing? Am I willing to lose any of this that I've worked so hard to create? Like, what am I waiting for? I could wait so that everyone around me understands, and maybe I'll never get there, but maybe I could. And that just became too big of a gamble for me that I was like, "Oh, I think me losing my ability to trust myself, to be able to go to a party, come home and nurse my baby and fully remember it the morning after, that's enough." And some people still don't understand and it's just hard when we're asking permission for something that is so personal, and generally we don't share our feelings about alcohol and how we drink. Generally, we keep those inside. And so, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. And I think that the part that's also hard is that, alcohol is like the only drug where if you tell someone you're going to stop using it, they ask you why in a social setting, right?
It's so true. You know, one thing that I had to really realize early in sobriety is that anyone's reaction to my not drinking is 100% about them and their drinking, right? If someone was curious about it, like, "Wait, what do you mean you just stopped?" Um, that means they've had these like, "Oh, okay, if she stops, does that mean I should? Or if she qualifies, do I?" So it is hard because there's so much in society, like, we consider drinking a privilege, right? And it's like, it's a privilege to be able to drink alcohol, and if you're sober, then it's just a punishment, and that is in my book, I, like, dismantle that whole idea so that at the end, you've now realized, like, "Oh my god, this thing is not a privilege," and to think that there was this machine in place in big alcohol just based trying to make money, so that we can look at alcohol as a privilege and then a life without it that's a punishment to ourselves is bananas. And it feels like stepping out of a cult. Like once you're out of it and you're like, "Oh my God. Yeah."
Yeah, and it's also this thing where I think pattern it's like patterns and habits where people are still doing the same stuff they did when they were like 19, 20, 21, 22 years old when they're like 42, right? And it's like, when are you gonna, grow up and stop acting like you're a 22-year-old?
Yeah. And it is like one of the things I say is that I outgrew alcohol, right? And like if you think about when you started drinking, I started drinking, I was like 16. Like nothing in my life is the same. I'm not the same, thank God, right? Nothing is the same except alcohol. Alcohol is still the same. Alcohol will never change. And so the idea that we can just say like, yeah, I've actually outgrown this thing and thank God. Um, because I have a lot more to lose now than I did when I was 16 and felt infallible and like, nothing could touch me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I talk a lot about if you're still partying like you did when you were younger in your 30s, like that's a problem.
Yeah, that's a problem. That yeah. Yeah.
And if you're still hanging out with the same people doing that you did in like high school and college, it's another problem. And not to say that you can't have lifelong friends. I mean, I've been friends with some people for a long time, but it's not the same people that I was doing certain things with when I was in high school and college. It's totally different people that I've developed relationships with. And I think it's tough for people to, I think that the toughest part of quitting things like alcohol and weed are the ceremonial societal aspects of it that exist. It's like if you go to a bar or you go meet friends out for dinner, it's like, do I order O'Doul's? Now it's a mocktail, right? It's like, what do I do when I'm out? How do I respond when the person who normally drinks too much is like, why aren't you having a drink? How do I develop the courage? And it just becomes like challenging with all of that said. But I do know that on the other side of quitting something like alcohol or weed or whatever substance is tearing your life apart is there's a lot of strength that comes from that.
Oh my God. Totally. And resiliency, right? The idea that you can count on yourself to be like, "Oh, I can actually go to this thing and, like, feel a little uncomfortable or whatever, social anxiety or and I don't have to, like, tap out and immediately say, like, "Obviously, you can't handle this without alcohol." Like, that's just not true. Also, when alcohol's the draw to, like, go somewhere, to go out, to go to a party, when you remove that, you really decide, like, who you wanna spend time with, and you find out very quickly that people who are drinking are not interesting. Like, I'm talking about people who are, like, drunk, right? I'm not talking about if you have, like, a glass of wine, but people who are drunk, really are really annoying. They're not interesting. They repeat themselves, they get very loud, they're sweaty, like, they're just not fun to hang out with. I think in sobriety, I've found, you know, yeah, maybe I lost some friends, but I think I just lost drinking buddies, and that's okay. Like, there's a huge difference between drinking buddies and when alcohol's the draw and, like, an actual friendship that you can connect and that is meaningful.
Yeah, I don't know if you follow, do you know who Sahil Bloom is? He wrote this great book. It's actually sitting behind me on it's called The Five Types of Wealth, and he's got a good um video that went like viral based on that. Just talking about how most of your friends aren't really your real friends. They're just along for the ride when it's fun, when it's convenient. And there's a few like ride or die friends you want to keep around because they're with you through thick and thin. And you learn very fast who your real friends are when you stop partying. Because the ones that are just along for the ride will slowly disappear, quickly disappear. In fact,
Yeah, it's like a colander. It's like a friendship colander, and, like, you just shake it out, and then you just have the gold left, which is all you really needed anyway.
and it's a hard realization too, because you think, because again, you're being attached with this common hobby, which is drinking, partying, that is creating this bond, which there is some, I'm sure, some level of bonding that exists, but it's not like as real as it appears because it's being masked with substances that drown out everything else. And you'll find that people, they just have a hard time like adjusting. Like, well, what do I do now? I'm so used to tailgating before I go to an event. I'm so used to happy hour at 5 p.m. What is your advice for people who are trying to make this shift, the sober shift, no pun intended, and are looking for ways to meet new friends?
I think first, before, because you're talking about the building, really, right? It's like building new connections in sobriety, building connections outside of drinking, outside of partying. Even before that, there is kind of a burning down, a destroying that we have to realize that when like alcohol was serving a purpose, right? And without it, you might feel lonely at first. You might feel bored. You might feel those things that probably are new to you. It's kind of like going through a feelings class when you take this alcohol, this thing that has been numbing and you've been escaping with. Um, you're gonna feel some and I think when it's been in your life probably since your teens, maybe early 20s, feelings when they come up can be scary because we think we're always gonna feel like that. And the thing is that you're just not, and you're strong enough to feel that. And so you're gonna feel bored. That's okay. The thing about feeling bored is that it gets to lead you to being creative and figuring out what you like to do. One of the best ways to do that is to like go back to like 15, 16-year-old you. What did you do after school before alcohol came in and like ruined stuff and kind of became a hobby before whatever was in your cup became the thing that you did? What did you like to do? Start there and, like, take chances, do that, and then also really finding a sober community. I would start online if you don't know where to go in person. I have my own, like, there are so many online now that you can just start there, um, and you're not gonna like everybody in sobriety. Like, you're still gonna be like, "Yeah, you're a dork," or "I don't like you." That's okay. Like, they're not all gonna be your people. The good thing is you don't need that many. You need 2, maybe 1 to start, maybe 2, that you can just speak openly with about how it's going, how you're feeling, when you're craving stuff, or, yeah, what to do. Like, go for a walk, go get coffee, exercise, run. Like, running became huge. It was always huge for me. Um, but I love running is just kind of when I feel my most, like, at peace and, um, yeah, that's the building stuff, and that takes time.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time, and I think community, like you said, is so important. You have to be willing to meet new people and join fellowship in whatever way works for you. And I do think that when you're in recovery, you don't have to be a jerk, but you have to get comfortable being unliked because a lot of times the problem that led you to abusing a substance was your willingness to need to be liked by everyone and fit in. And you have to unlearn that pattern, and you have to be able to practice saying no and being confident. Like, you will feel so confident, like, the next time you're out and about with friends, and they're, like, asking you why you're not doing something you don't wanna do, and you're like, I wanna better myself. I wanna improve my health." And I found that when you frame it like that, "Hey, I'm just committed to working on my overall health and well-being this year, and such is not part of it," people tend to respond better because, like, who's gonna, like, hate on you for that?
Especially if you I think you said the magic word. This is what my husband did when he quit drinking. He said, "I've committed." He said at that point, "I've committed to a year without alcohol." No one's gonna argue if you say, "I'm committed," no one's gonna be like, "Nah, what's a commitment to yourself? That's not bad." Like, no one yeah, what are they gonna say? Like, "No, don't do that?" No one's gonna say that. And so, yeah, being able to say, like, "I've committed to this thing," like you said, to better yourself, to better your life, to better my friendships, to better all of it. Um, yeah, that's you can't argue with that.
What is your position on mocktails? I think I look at mocktails as a great alternative for people who don't want to have a drink. I also, part of me, and this it's a very small part of me, so please take this for what it is like, are mocktails for people that haven't fully detached themselves from alcohol?
Okay, so I think it's a very personal thing. As with everything in sobriety, you have to kind of sit with it and be like, okay, how does this make me feel, right? And does this feel good? For me, I love mocktails because sometimes you don't feel like drinking sparkling water. The cool thing about mocktails is I'm not escaping in a mocktail because it doesn't have that psychoactive substance in it that makes me escape. I'm also having, like, a mocktail. I'm not gonna sit down and drink 3 mocktails because I'm not thirsty anymore. The cool thing about drinking when you're not drinking alcohol is, like, you guys stop drinking when you're not thirsty. But I think all of it with everything in sobriety, whether it's counting days or, just calling yourself an alcoholic or mocktails or whatever it is, this is yours. There's no like right way to do this. There's no wrong way to do this. It's just a continual checking in with yourself. How does this make me feel? What do I need? Like, does this feel like it propels me in my sobriety, or does this feel a little sticky and I need to look into it? Um, I am pro mocktails for me.
I think, like, following your own journey is super important, and I'm not against mocktails at all. I think they're actually great. I just part of me in thinking about it is, like, the people who drink O'Doul's, it's like that person I don't think at times is fully, like, detached from from beer and being like, "Okay, like, I'm just gonna have something else. I'm gonna have water or club soda or sparkling water." And I also agree with you that, like, sparkling water, I'm sure, can get pretty boring. It's like, "Well, do I want a lemon this time or a lime? Maybe throw some, like, berries in it, mix it up."
And, like, I down sparkling water. I mean, I drink so much sparkling water that if I'm, like, out to dinner, yeah, I wanna try, like, something that I'm not just gonna down and something that feels a little bit special, but also that is not, ethanol and gonna kill me.
There is this huge movement now to quit alcohol. I think Huberman has pushed this very strongly, which I commend him for. And the podcast episode went viral that he did on it, and others have come out and spoken about it too. But he just comes to mind, and people have kind of followed the trend to just quit just for the sake of health. Like, why do you think it's become so popular?
I think we know more, right? I think actually when I quit drinking, I was 39 years old and I didn't know alcohol was ethanol. Like, I just didn't know that. I didn't know it was linked to 7 plus cancers. I don't even think I knew how addictive it was. And I think that once you know these things, it's really hard to unknow. For some people, an active addiction, right? It's not a knowledge problem. Like they could know as much as they want to know about alcohol. But if it's an addiction, that's a different story. But I think for those who aren't in, and when I say active addiction, I mean like feeling withdrawals, like really having to drink. Um, yeah, I think once you know, you can't unknow. I also think things like Dry January, Sober October, um, is great because it gives people a chance to say, "Okay, let me just try this. I've done it this way, right? I've always invited alcohol in. Let me just see what life could be like without it." Um, and the cool thing is that it's pretty good without it. You don't feel dusty and slow and hungover and um yeah, you gotta feel some stuff. You gotta figure some stuff out. But, yeah,
What do you think's the blueprint to recovering successfully?
I do think not doing it alone. I think finding a safe place where you can share your deepest shame surrounding alcohol. Tell tell your darkest moments, get those out. I call it, like, mold in the basement, right? And when we're drinking, we're just not open to talking about alcohol. We're not talking about all of our stories and all of the things that alcohol has done. And so when we quit drinking, we need to be able to do that in a safe place and to say like, this is what happened, and being able to share that shame, because I think shame can keep us stuck. And then you're in that vicious cycle because shame is really hard to feel, right? And so alcohol kind of swoops in so we don't have to feel it. And being able to share that and hearing people say, like, yeah, me too. Like, that wasn't you, right? That was you with alcohol. And I think that you start there. Um, yeah. I think you start there.
And I think that people need to replace some of these bad habits with new positive ones. You mentioned running. I know fitness has been big for myself and a lot of other people when it comes to quitting substances. What are some of the like habits that you found to be helpful on a daily or weekly basis?
I mean, writing is obviously a big one for me, just really getting the thoughts out. I don't like to say journaling because that sounds like, oh my God, journaling to me sounds intimidating. And so, whether it's like just a list of things that are in your head, getting the stuff in your head out with someone and on your own, I think is great. Running for me is huge. Yoga is huge. Music is really like, when I just wanna get out of my head, music transports me. I love it, like a dance party with my kids. Water is also good, and I'm talking, like, if it's swimming, if it's a bath, or if it's crying. Like, I love a cry. I think I think the answer is feeling and then escaping in a good way and in a healthy way, because you can't just sit in your feelings all day, like, no one that's just not fun. And so being able to find, yeah, some sort of healthy way to escape.
Have you found that people can go from regularly drinking on a daily basis to having a better relationship with it and just drinking like maybe like once every week or once every other week?
No. I'm just gonna flat out say no, because that's not how alcohol is designed. So, stories generally and it's the same thing if you were drinking a lot and then you took a break and then you're like, "Okay, I think I've got it," right? And then these stories always start with, "And then I was moderating and it was going great," right? Until. There is always an until. And I think when you can separate that it wasn't like user error, that until, it wasn't like, "Oh, you should have just drank better and it would have gone fine." It's just what happens with a highly addictive substance. Um, until you can see alcohol for what it is kind of this going back and forth. Annie Grace has a really good quote, and it's called, she says, 99% is a 100% is a breeze. And that's perfectly sums up moderating alcohol.
What about like the people you spend time with? How important is that?
So important. Oh my god, so important. And my bar is, like, very high, right? For the people that I'm a busy mom of 3. I work, obviously, and, like, I just I want like, good quality relationships, and that means I'm not filling my time with, like, warm bodies. It feels I think once you get into these rooms where people are sharing their shame and you're connecting about real things, it's really hard then to go out and feel any sort of connection with something that feels very surfacey and not important. Like, it's very clear then it's like, "Okay, this isn't for me anymore. You just don't qualify for my time and energy anymore," and that's okay.
And I think people have a hard time like letting go of old friendships. Like, do you think it's just you could do like the fade where you just like slowly stop reaching out or answering their texts, or do you just cold turkey cut people off, or do you have a conversation? Like, what do you find to be the best approach?
It depends on the relationship, right? I think if it's toxic, and if you've tried and all this stuff, then yeah, just block, never again. Like, you're just not welcome in my space, right? Like, take care, but not here. I think that if it's just this kind of fading thing, I do think it's the clear as kind approach. Like, hey, I wish you the best, but like, I need to focus on, what's important to me right now, and no hard feelings. But I think it depends. And I think in your gut. And if it is just like I kind of don't owe you an explanation and you don't qualify for my explanation, that's okay. Like, just peace out and keep it moving.
I was listening to a podcast this morning, and this guy, Dr. John Deloney, I don't know if you're familiar with his work. He's been on the podcast a few times. Great guest if you get him on. And he was on Chris Williamson's podcast, who also hosts a really good podcast that I love listening to. And they were talking about like solving for peace. And that really just like hit like in life. Like, how do you solve for peace? Like, how do you set your life up to solve for that? And I think when it comes to the conversation we're having right now, I think it's important to think about like, how do you solve for peace in your life? Does alcohol fit in that? Yes or no? Why or why not? The types of people, your habits, and all that stuff. So I thought it was really interesting. And I was thinking about that as our conversations unfolded, like, how do people solve for that in their life? And I think if you can do that, I mean, obviously life will be that much better.
Yeah. And if you just think about like what does peace mean and how does that feel to you, right? Like, get so specific about it. For me, I feel it most Sunday mornings. Like, Sunday mornings are like I always say they're like the soul of my sobriety, right? Like, I feel the peace, and it's in such contrast to the Sunday mornings of the party girl that I used to be, right? Because Sunday mornings then like Sunday scaries and all of that stuff. And so, yeah, what does peace feel like to you? Um, yeah, I love that. I love to watch drama on my screen. Like, I don't want it in my life. Like, I've kind of designed my life for it to be very, wonderfully boring and consistent and stable and steady and peaceful. And the fact is that alcohol is just it's not an obstacle, it's a barrier to that, right? Because with it, it brings, a big question mark, and that's whether or not you're moderating or you're addicted. Like, it just brings the question mark that feels very scary and unpeaceful.
What do you think is like a good first step for somebody that is having this internal battle that you've had where you're like, I need to quit. On the surface, my life looks good. Why do I need to quit? Like, what's a good first step there?
Tell someone. I think getting it out of your mind where it has been and it has lived and it has festered, and you've had to deal with it on your own while assuming everyone else has it figured out. I think you have to speak it. And you have to speak it, whether that's to your partner, a trusted best friend, on a meeting. You're going to be terrified. You're going to say, I don't know what I'm doing. That's okay. I think you have to get it out of your mind and to speak it, and then you start there and then move on from there.
And I think one of the other things that really helps is learning how to compartmentalize your days. I'm not somebody I didn't get into recovery in AA or NA. Like, so my view of recovery is different, I think, than that camp. Although I strongly support that method because it's helped so many people. But the one day at a time approach is so important because, it gives you this framework to look at of how can I just make the most of this one day, and then stacking those days, and then the days become weeks and the weeks become months. And then you look back and you're like, crap, I have like 3 weeks of not doing X or not doing this. And because I think what happens is people will listen to podcasts like this, or they'll watch, their favorite celebrity on their sobriety journey. And it's like, oh, like this person's been sober for 20 years. I'm at day 2. Like, how am I going to get to day 6,000 or whatever that number would be for that person? And all I can say is, as cliche and as, repetitive as it sounds, like, you have to focus on just that day, and have like, what's ahead of you, like, pay attention to that, but don't make it so excessive that takes away from your ability to win today.
Yeah, I think that's so good. I never, like, counted days in sobriety because I did feel like, "What? Like, 3 day," like, this is another thing that's so personal, like, it either propels you or it makes you feel like, "I should have more days." And so, the compassionate way for me to do it for myself, I talk about this in the book, like, it's the list of sober firsts that I kind of was like, "Alright, let me see, what do I have coming up? Okay, I've never done a concert sober, let's try that out," right? And then I would, like, tick that off and, like, whatever, like, so I had this list of things that I wanted to try in sobriety, but then also I did have this kind of, like, mantra, um, that I just anytime, the forever question or, like, the doubt, that's just fear, right? That's your brain kind of running off and being like, "Okay, is it always gonna be this hard?" Um, my mantra was it's easier to keep going, right? Because it is easier to keep going. And that remains true whether you're at 2 days, whether you're at 2 years, 20 years. It's just so much easier to keep going than it is to start again. So, just maybe, yeah, if you have a phrase that feels good to you, write it down, like, use your Post-its as a reminder, and, I still like, the idea of forever, it's such a thing, like, people are like, "Are you done drinking forever?" Um, like, when do you ever have to answer forever for anything? Like, I don't I hope because, like, yeah, but if I go out for a run today and I'm like, "Hey, I went for a run." No one's like, "Are you gonna do that forever? You gonna run forever?" Like, well, I don't know, maybe, like, it's a good thing, so hopefully. So, yeah, just try not to get caught up in these, like it just hints at the archaic way that society looks at sobriety, I think.
One of the big challenges that happens when people get into recovery is the guilt and the regret of like wasted years, mistakes, failing, whatever. What was guilt like for you? Like, how did you come to terms with all that?
Mine was and I mean, I think the guilt remains, okay? I think and for me, the guilt wasn't as bad as because the guilt is saying, like, "Yeah, I screwed up." Like, when I nursed my baby in a blackout, I screwed up, right? It was the shame, and the shame is the thing that was the lie. Like, the guilt is kinda telling the truth. The guilt is saying, like, "You did something you shouldn't have done. I regret it." Right? And that's the truth, but that's not who I am. The shame is the lie. The shame is the one saying, "What kind of mom are you? You're a horrible mom that you did that." And that's the lie. And the only way I know to shed shame is to share it, is to say that's why I don't have the shame about because I've said it so many times what I did. And I've shared it, with a therapist. I've shared it with my group. I've connected over it. And so, but I think the guilt of, like, "That wasn't great," like, "I don't wanna do that again." I think that remains just because I have morals and I know right or wrong, right? But it's the shame, for sure.
How did you like transcend your relationship with failure as a mom to look at it as like a piece or a defining moment in your story, but not what actually defined you?
I it was really shifting the blame from me to alcohol. Yes, I invited it in, right? I said yes, but that's not me as a mom. Like, but for alcohol, I would have never put my baby in a dangerous position, right? I would have never. Like, and this goes for every mom who has driven drunk with their kids in the car. We just that's not us as moms. That's us as a drunk mom when alcohol has taken over, right? But that's not us as moms. And the amazing thing is by removing something. It's by taking away something so that we could be fully us, that we are the moms we're supposed to be. And so I talk to moms every single day about this because this is such a big thing that we feel we take the fall. And, anytime, we're relaxed or goofy, it's like alcohol's the hero, but we'll take the fall for all the bad stuff. Um, and it is just separating yourself from that.
Yeah, it's really tough. I remember when I was like going through all my stuff when I was a kid and just behaving the way I was as an addict. It was like, how do I convince myself that I messed up and I wasn't a mess up? Like, and I think in your story, it's very similar. Like, how do you convince yourself that, what you did wasn't necessarily okay? However, it doesn't mean that you're a bad mom. It just means you made some mistakes that you had to fess up to and come to terms with and figure out like how you were going to make your next move to get better as a person.
Yeah, and man, there's so much compassion there because it's just time, right? It's time to it's just time away from alcohol. Like I said, alcohol is a barrier. It's not an obstacle to this, it's a barrier. Like with alcohol, we can't see it. Once we get time away from this thing and we begin to act with integrity, right? And we begin to heal the parts of us that felt messed up. And we begin to act as the same at a party or at church, right? Once we begin to really be able to count on ourselves to be consistent and our values are aligned with who we want to be, that I think is the healing balm, really, that then we can look back and say like, "Oh yeah, that wasn't me. That wasn't me at all," right? That's very clearly the alcohol. I think that there is some faith in there and there's like a trust fall to say like, "All right, I don't feel this right now. I still feel like a mess up. Man, I'm just going to keep going today and I'm going to keep doing what feels okay for me today in order to keep moving ahead away from alcohol." And then you'll get to a point where you look back and then it's just so clear. And it's always, the answer to shame is always compassion for me. Like just so much compassion for myself. I think we've tried beating ourselves up. Um it doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work at all. Do you have any kind of spiritual relationship?
I do. I struggle a little bit with religion, just based on how I grew up in a philandering stepdad who claimed to be very religious. Um, and some men kind of screwed that up for me. But I'm very spiritual as far as like my relationship with God and believing and having faith in that. And I think that does. I lost my dad just a year into my sobriety, and I've losing him has really strengthened my spiritual side, I think. I feel really close to him through this, and that to me feels like spirituality. Like that feels like, okay, um, something's going on.
What's been the biggest unexpected blessing you've gotten from quitting alcohol?
I really think it's been healing parts of me that never felt enough or valuable. I think it's that. I think it's me being able to say just how deep that wound was and how I've been able to, in my 40s, heal that not through anything else, like just through me, like being able to heal that for myself and to say, like, you're okay. Like, you are worthy and you are valuable as you are. No need to prove, no need to please. Um, that has been, I mean, it's been life-changing in the way that I'm able to then mother and show my kids that for them. I think breaking generational cycles and healing that has been the most, just wonderfully surprising thing.
Give me a few examples of how that wound would play out for you in adulthood.
Oh man, I mean, the party girl, you know, that's what the party girl was. It was very fun to be a party girl because I got a lot of attention, especially from men, right? And seeking that attention is saying, like, show me I'm worthy, show me I'm valuable, right? And in order to get that attention and be that kind of out there party girl, I had to have alcohol, right? I wasn't, because that wasn't who I was, and so it was like, "Let me drink this, so then I can escape into this, so then I can numb, and then you can show me how valuable I am."
How did you begin to redefine your relationship with external validation? Because that's a tough one for people, especially like you're in the world of social media and you're still getting attention. I mean, just in a different way.
It is tough, I do think something happens in our 40s, especially, as women. I get a lot of attention, and it's not all good, right? And so I've gotten, I mean, oh my god, I've been doing this for 10 years, and so you get a lot of bad attention, horrible things said about me, and so I really have been able to, like, set boundaries and put it up and be like, "That's noise." And that is noise. The good stuff, people put me on the pedestal of, like, "I'm sober because of you." That's not true, right? That's a very, like, undeserved pedestal, and also, the bad stuff about how horrible I am and that I'm all of the things, and so none of it's true, none of it just doesn't, that's not why I do it, it's not what matters to me. I think that's probably more with age, of me just saying, like, I just don't care what you think of me." And there's, like, the being able to say that and to mean it, being able to be disliked, being able to be misunderstood, um, I think is like a superpower. And I think, yeah,
Do you think that quitting alcohol like really enhanced your ability to have that superpower?
yes. Because had I been drinking, I would be spiraling into self-doubt. What's wrong with me? How could I have let that happen? Why did I do that? Why did I say that? Right? I don't have that. And so I can say, "Oh, I said that. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have," but there's not shame. That's the guilt, right? "Oh, yeah, I said something I shouldn't have said." But that doesn't say anything about me. That I just made a mistake. That's not me as a person. Like, I know me. I know who I am. I know what I value. I know how I love. And I know that nothing out there will prove that I'm worthy or not. And so, yeah, it's kind of it's like next level living, it feels like.
That's amazing. And I think we're in this world where everyone wants to be respected, loved, seen, like all the things. And I think what happens is the fastest way for people to not like truly like you or respect you is to not respect yourself and not love yourself and stand up for yourself. I think people will admire you and respect you more in life if you stand on something and you stand up for yourself than if you can continue to give in to the external validation trap or peer pressure or whatever, because then people look at you like, oh, like, do you not have a backbone to stand up for yourself? Like you're saying, you need to do this thing. And then every time you have an opportunity to do it, you don't do it. And it's a hard lesson. Like, I think that, you and I have been fortunate to already, I've kind of learned that lesson and turned things around, but it took both of us a decently long time. I still like am not perfect with the way I behave on a regular basis, right?
No, 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 'cause we're humans, we're not robots.
I mean, there's things that I'll say sometimes like, I shouldn't have said it that way,
Yes.
but I think you just have to have the awareness to own your behaviors and your habits and figure out like, how does all of this fit within the context of where you want to go in life?
Totally, and it's so much easier to say, "Oh my gosh, I totally screwed up, I didn't mean to say it like that," when that my value isn't attached to being perfect and right and understood by everyone else, right? Like, I can be like, "Oh, whoops, like, my bad. I said that wrong," or whatever it is. Like, I can be wrong, like, that's okay, and I have compassion for myself enough to be like, "Yeah, like, you're not gonna you're not going to get it right. Like you're going to make some mistakes, and like that's okay. Also, I think it still comes back to community, which when you have a handful of people who do see you, who do understand you, who do love you unconditionally, who you've told your deepest shame to, and still say, yeah, like we got you, like you're worthy, you're valuable. When you have those people, then you don't need it from outside. Like you're just like, yeah, you can misunderstand me. That's fine.
If you had to pinpoint a single mistake that you think really gets in the way of people quitting alcohol or quitting a substance that they need to quit, what do you think that mistake is?
I mean, it's kind of broad, but it's avoiding feeling. Generally avoiding feeling uncomfortable. Like not knowing that a feeling will not destroy them. Does that make sense? Is that too broad?
Now, I think you have to be able to reconnect to yourself.
I think the opposite of being addicted and drinking is feeling uncomfortable. And like, I think we go to a lot of lengths to make sure we don't feel uncomfortable. And the problem with not feeling uncomfortable is that you stay stuck, whether that's in addiction with alcohol or moderation, a job we hate, a relationship we hate. Like feeling uncomfortable is the key to all of it. I think it's easy to look at people who are putting themselves out there, are doing brave things, are, on podcasts or speaking, whatever. It's really easy to say like, well, they're just brave. They can do that. Um, I always try to make sure people know like, no, 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 I'm scared like all the time. I'm nervous a lot. I'm like, "Oh, okay, like, some anxiety, uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable a lot. And you just you have to do it to prove like, oh, I can be uncomfortable and I can still do the thing.
Absolutely. Well, Suzanne, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the pod. If people want to listen to your show, they want to connect with you, if they want to buy your book, where is the best place to do that?
Okay, so you can come on my Instagram at Suzanne Warye or go to SuzanneWarye.com. And the book will be out anywhere you buy books. It's called The Sober Shift. It comes out September 30th. And yeah, the podcast is The Sober Mom Life.
Awesome. Well, congrats again on everything that you've achieved. Congrats on the book. And thanks again for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.